Welcome to Itasca Water's Practical Water Wisdom Series. I'm John Downing, your host for today. Today's program is called Success Stories on Preventing and Remediating the Spread of Aquatic Invasive Species in Minnesota Lakes. First, let me tell you a little bit about Itasca Waters. We're a local nonprofit headquartered in Grand Rapids, Minnesota, with members who either live or vacation in our area. Our goal is to continue to find interesting ways to educate residents in the region about how to keep our waters clean for both the environment and the economy. We've been teaming up with like-minded people and organizations for 16 years. You can read about all those projects on our website at itascawaters.org. If you have an interest, please consider joining us and becoming a member or a volunteer to help support programs like this. Well, we thank our partners shown on your screen for their support in producing this program. They're very important in making these programs happen. Today's program will work as usual. Our guest will speak for about 30 minutes and then we'll answer questions from you. To submit a question, you only need to click on the Q&A button at the bottom of the screen and type in a brief question. You can do this at any time, and we will read the questions on your behalf. We will not be using the chat function today. This program is being recorded and will be available for viewing online through our website, itascawaters.org. Also, we value your opinion, so please click on the survey link, which will be on the screen at the end of today's program, or complete the survey that will be sent to you by email. We really appreciate you doing that. And now for today's speaker, Madeline Hayden is the research outreach specialist at the Minnesota Aquatic Invasive Species Research Center, also known as MAISRC to many of us. She plays a crucial role in connecting research projects with people across the state and providing vital support for outreach and research translation initiatives. With over 12 years of experience in freshwater mussels and river ecology, Maddie previously led the freshwater mussel propagation program with the Minnesota Department of Natural Resources. There she established an aquaculture facility to rear federally endangered mussel species in Lake City, Minnesota, driven by her deep passion for preserving the health and biodiversity of Minnesota's lakes and rivers. Welcome, Maddie.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that introduction. Awesome. You guys, thank you so much. Thank you so much for inviting me to present today. Again, I am Maddie Hayden. I'm with MAISRC. I have a really unique role. I get to translate science. I get to teach about AIS and the research that our researchers and MAISRC are completing kind of throughout Minnesota. And, when we think about AIS, when we talk about it, it often invokes this feeling of inevitability, right? The spread, the presence is unsurmountable. This is a big problem to tackle. And it leads you to wonder if there has been a success in this turmoil. And the answer is yes. We are making strides every day to prevent the establishment of invasive species. And so I've outlined a number of stories just to talk to you guys today. And I hope I leave you with a little bit of a renewed sense of optimism about aquatic invasive species. So there we go. Second that they didn't advance. All right. First, I wanted to start off by thinking about success. How do you view success? And this is particularly important because we view success as black, white, success, failure. You climb the stairs of success, you reach the top, you didn't, you won the race, you did it. But that's not our reality, right? Success is messy and it varies for everyone. What one person might view as success, another may have a totally different perspective. And so I just threw up this Adam Grant example on careers because it's something that so many of us take pride in. But truthfully, it's more than the salary, it's more than the job title and performing. It's about the quality of the accomplishments and the values they bring to you and your life. So if we're undergoing kind of this mindset change when it comes to success in our lives, success with our families, we also need to rethink about other aspects. And one of those can be invasive species. How are they viewed? What classifies as success? Again, for one person, say this is a lakeshore owner. It's inevitably going to be different than the state of Minnesota. It's going to be completely different than a tourist who just wants to motor through a dense set of weeds. Each person's assessment of success will ultimately be a measurement made in alignment with their own core values. What you value most will influence your overall perspective on whether something is a success or not. So when you think about AIS, was your reaction eradication or bust? Or do you fall into one of these green boxes? Where are your values? Is it in native species returning, containing populations, amount of resources, funding? When we think about eradication, is it feasible? What if it's not? And just because eradication is not feasible doesn't mean that control efforts can't provide substantial benefits. Sound, targeted management can reduce invasive species populations and minimize the negative impacts to recreation and ecological harm. So really quickly, we're talking about invasive species. What are they? In the simplest terms, they are a non-native organism that spreads rapidly to a new environment. It often causing human ecosystem and economy harm. And honestly, the consensus is pretty clear, right? Under human influences, species are spreading further, faster, and in greater numbers and beyond their natural range than they ever have before. These types of biological invasions, they threaten biodiversity, ecosystem services, regional economies, and they pose this huge challenge for conservation and resource management. Kind of this last introduction slide is just talking about the timeline of invasion. This is an invasion curve, and I hope some of you have seen it. And what we have on this graphic is we have our invasion timeline moving up in time. We have the area affected growing as it gets larger, management costs, again, growing as they get larger. So if you can imagine this, blue is cool, it's less expensive, it's more efficient. Red, a lot of effort, high costs associated with it. So now, as you're looking at this figure, I kind of want you to take each one of these bins and consider them separately. Starting with prevention, this is the most cost-effective management strategy, right? Reduce the risk of invasion by controlling key vectors where species are introduced. Think of this as like a public water access, our watercraft inspectors. Moving up this curve into eradicate, eradicate or like early species. This is like following an early detection. It's usually pretty straightforward, cost-effective. You have the highest probability, probably of quote unquote success. We're moving up this timeline. We've had the introduction. We're in kind of this lag phase, moving up the curve. And it's still reasonable that you can have success in these areas, in this containment area. But this yellow box I just added is at the point where the public usually becomes aware of the problem. And you can see how high we are on the curve. The E word, eradication, is much more unlikely, and let alone the effort required. I mean, we're blazing into this red. It becomes much more intense. And so we're starting to shift that idea to local control and management that hopefully involves some types of, multiple integrated management strategies to help alleviate some of the pressures from invasive species. So as I go through and talk about, oh no, my lights just turned off. I don't think that will matter. I didn't move enough in my office. I apologize, guys. Okay, back to the talk. I'm going to talk about success in these different areas, in those different bins relating to the invasion curve. So same brackets, prevention, we have that blue area all the way down to that red high cost associated with the management. And really, before I kind of get into the guts of it, I'm going to point out that on each one of my slides, I have a QR code for citation. This is what I use to create the slide. My role is the translation of these success stories. I know a little about a lot of topics, but I'm truly an expert of none, right? So if you're curious to learn more, just grab out your phone and take a screen, scan the QR code. So really quick into just a little bit of history about AIS in Minnesota. As I was doing some of this research, this was just more of a curiosity slide. I came across this 1996 annual report, which, fun fact, was the year the sticker program started. Even though inspection started in 91, 92, focusing a lot on Eurasian water milfoil and curly leaf pondweed. But this statement kind of caught my attention right here at the end, that there was no evidence of zebra mussels moving into inland lakes that year. And we know zebra mussels were introduced in border waters, late 1980s, early 1990s, but 1996 there was no documented new infestations into inland lakes. Like, what an accomplishment, But then it also kind of led me down another path of, okay, let's look at the infested waters list. This is public; it's on the DNR's website, and I just made this graphic. And one thing I didn't even realize was, looking at this blue line, which is zebra mussels, is that the majority of zebra mussel infestations have really taken place in the last like 10 to 15 years. So this graphic here, we have Eurasian water milfoil, zebra mussels, and then all other AIS. It's displaying the total number of lakes infested. So every year this number is growing. Okay, let's get back to talking about these brackets. We're going to move first to prevention. I really just touched on a watercraft inspector in that last one, right? But I kind of want to cover their impact a little bit more. Truthfully, the impact is unknown, the extent of their impact, the watercraft inspectors, because we don't live in an alternate reality that would show us what happened if we didn't have watercraft inspectors at our lake. But I think it's safe to say that in all actuality, they have presented numerous amounts of infestations. This screen grab of the boat inspector in starry stonewort is an example from 2022. It was highly publicized because starry stonewort has a huge potential to impact the Great Lakes system. And it goes without saying that this was probably not the only watercraft inspector that removed an invasive species that year entering a water body. The 2023 DNR reported that they had found 225 watercrafts entering a water body not known to have been infested. Wow, right? It's great. Minnesota can tout we have 96% compliance with individuals entering into a water body, but that 4% is really what our watercraft inspectors are there for. And they've made such an impact, and their dedication is preventing things from moving into our lakes. So another prevention story, prevention, like I said, is the ability, or what it is, to reduce risk of invasion by controlling key vectors of introduction. And this one, I'm going to talk about ballast water, and I'm going to start with the history of ballast water, because I think it's important. We have heard over and over again, this entered through the Great Lakes. We know that, but what has been done? Because the Great Lakes invasion spans 2 centuries, between shipping, canals, aquarium releases, bait releases, aquaculture escapes, intentional stocking. I mean, the numbers are pretty high. The most notable ship-mediated invasions are the spiny water flea, Eurasian water milfoil, and the zebra mussels. Between 1959 and 2006, 82 species of non-native organisms established themselves in the Great Lakes, which is an average invasion rate of 1.71 species per year, which is the highest on record for any freshwater ecosystem. And it kind of leads you to wonder, where were regulations? What has been done? And so first off, starting in 1993, both US and Canada required ships to do a mid-ocean ballast exchange. It's as easy as it sounds, kind of what the video is showing. Water out, water in, you're going to be able to kill those freshwater organisms with the salinity from the ocean. Despite expectations, introductions did not drop. And that was done because 75 to 95% of the ships declared that they had no pumpable ballast on board, which means that exempt them from the regulations, and they carried through residual water, again, with viable organisms in them. So it was finally in 2008, the US enacted a regulations mandating that every ship do this flush in, this spit and rinse. And it actually reduced the species introductions by 85% to now it is at 0.3 species per year. And you have to imagine now, with advancing technology, that number is going to continue to decline. I understand that you could get me on a technicality that this isn't a prevention measure because the damage has already been done. But when you consider how many thousands of ships are moving across the ocean at any given time, that from the moment of this regulation inception, we have now prevented that many more species from coming here. So we're kind of we're putting a cork and not allowing that to happen. Next up on the scale of early detection, right? So we're moving into that second bin. And this is where you have the higher probability of success when it comes to reducing species. That's where that hopeful E word comes in to eradicate. Briefly, this is going to be about starry stonewort. Starry stonewort is a macroalgae that can form dense mats, can interfere with the use of a lake, compete with native plants. Most of the spread comes from fragments, probably from improperly cleaned boats, personal watercrafts, docks, boat anchors, etc. And we know that desiccation studies done here at the university, so desiccation looking at the drying has varied. Large clumps can survive up to 72 hours, and these little starchy potato looking bulbils, I always say it wrong, you guys, can survive 2 hours. So starry stonewort was first found in Lake Coronis in 2015. It has since spread to about 30 lakes. This has been a really big focus for the Dan Larkin lab at the university, as well as Megan Weber with the U of M Extension. They have been developing citizen science programs to help survey lakes across all of Minnesota, one of which is called Starry Trek. Starry Trek started in 2017. It's a statewide effort that was focusing on, this new invader, this starry stonewort, as well as documenting every other invader that was there. This one-day event, and I have the plug up here for Join Starry Trek. You haven't missed it yet. This year's Starry Trek is taking place on August 10th. If you scan that QR code, you'll be taken to the registration. On this one day, there is about 20 or so meetups in which local coordinators train and they manage participants. So again, this started in 2017. It was the inaugural year specifically to look for starry stonewort. Groups searched 178 lakes, 20 counties, 200 volunteers, and that's when it was discovered at Grand Lake. Thankfully, it was kind of a light and isolated growth, and that was confirmed by the DNR, which then started this rapid response program. And since its discovery, there's been repeated events of removal. No algicide was used at this lake to manage it. It was strictly scuba and hand pulling efforts. So I have a figure here for you, and here we have the biomass removed as the response variable. We're going to see, we're going to be looking at that amount of biomass that was removed at each event. So starting with this 2017 data, we can see that the first time the divers went out, they removed a lot of biomass. This was midsummer. They went back again in the fall. They did another effort. They found substantially less. And then you're like, okay, well, what's the catch? Like, is it going to rebound? Is this management style effective? And realistically, in this case, yes. Each subsequent year, there was less and less starry stonewort found in early summer than there was the year prior, right? So you have these declines that were continuing to the point where in 2019 on this graphic, you can barely see any biomass that was found. And, this is just to really highlight the effectiveness of the hand pulling strategy. It can be particularly effective when you have this small infestation. This lake has been monitored since 2023, and you can kind of see after that initial invasion, like the amounts they're removing is really minimal and manageable. And so there's two more figures here about starry stonewort when they were found early. These lakes have had continuous treatment, whether that was chemical, mechanical, hand pulling. These two lakes, just like Grand Lake, they were found in the very early stages of the infestation. Lake associations partnered with the Minnesota DNR, got that rapid response going, and had efforts starting for managing for control. Every year they went back, you can see it was less and less. Keeping those populations small and manageable, it just helps from year to year. So, when you think about this as a homeowner, a lakeshore owner, a pet owner, a houseplant owner, right? Like maintaining is a lot of work. It requires a lot of energy, and particularly in a lake setting, that's a lot of effort. But treating starry stonewort, kind of like all invasive species, it's never a one and done. It's going to require work. You're going to have to keep on top of it. And most importantly, it's to find it early. And so for another early detection story, these are always fun. This is Ruth Lake. It's a 600-acre lake located in central Minnesota. They had, like every lake that has this unfortunate discovery, we're told they have zebra mussels in their lake. And I just want to point out a few highlights about the moment that zebra mussels were found. First, that the individual who found the zebra mussels knew how to identify them. He was a younger gentleman. He knew how to identify them and then immediately reported them to the DNR. He had just actually taken the AIS Detectors Core course through U of M Extension, which is kind of linked to Starry Trek a few slides back. And they weren't even a lakeshore owner. They were renting this family cabin. And so that is just the indicator that this is everyone in Minnesota can make this decision to know what an invasive species is and report it. It's not just necessarily the lakeshore owner, the lake association that's going to do it. It can be everyone. Okay, back on track. Since it was first reported, the DNR surveyed the area, they issued a permit, and they created a management plan. They defined a treatment area where the zebra mussels were found. And you can see here the two pictures at the top was the actual curtain, sediment curtain that was used for the treatment, and then the former president holding on to the now deceased zebra mussels. What's really great about Ruth Lake is that they started this intense 5-year monitoring program to see if there was additional mussels found there, right? They completed villager surveys once a month from May to September. In every one of the following years, additional inspections to everyone's docks when they were taken out. They've also paid for divers to check for zebra mussels, and it took 5 years until they found one single adult mussel in 2020. This mussel was large enough that it was thought to have been a remnant of the original invasion infestation, and it was found just a little bit outside of that treatment area. Since 2020, they decided to continue this program. It wasn't then until 2023 when they found one other single live zebra mussels. But overall, no detected villagers, no zebra mussels outside those 2 mussels have been found. And this group is just, they are dedicated, they're dedicating time, they're dedicating funds to ensure that this trend continues. And this really echoes the starry stonewort, right? Early detection, rapid response, continuous monitoring, they reduce the likelihood of spread within a lake. It's a lot of perseverance to keep this up. But when you think about it, just think about your house, think about even keeping up on your emails. Like, the work is continuous. The work that you put in was really going to help minimize their impacts. Again, I feel like I say that so much, but okay, we're moving into control. So, right, we're coming up that invasion curve. Kind of almost to where that yellow box was that I highlighted. And so this is just a beautiful story. Minnesota is reversing the spread of invasive Phragmites. This is a statewide movement. It's not just MAISRC. It's MAISRC, DNR, county ag, lake associations, right? They're working on this comprehensive statewide plan. And this is remarkable because if you were to look at Wisconsin or Michigan, you're just going to see spreading and persistent populations almost statewide. So I'm going to do just a really short overview. Again, when you're interested to learn more, take a look at those QR codes. So what is invasive Phragmites? It's common reed. It's a really tall perennial found in wetlands, shores, along roadsides, stormwater ponds. It's massive. It can tower 18 feet tall. Kind of what you hear with all invasive species, right? It outcompetes, it reduces native diversity, it impacts hydrology, limits wildlife, like all of those things. And at the point when researchers in Minnesota started looking into this species, they honestly were like, hey, is this at a level that we can develop a management plan to reduce its spread? And so began this crowdsourced reporting through EdMaps. This reporting revealed a manageable invasion, right? They thought adequate effort, they thought it could be reversed. So honestly, all those groups collectively, they decided to confront this problem. They dug into the literature. They determined kind of when is the best time to treat non-native Phragmites, and then provided additional guidance for knocking down the dead stems, kind of between treatments, and how to increase the effectiveness, basically. And they're seeing positive results. They're only 4 years into this statewide control effort, and they've largely succeeded in preventing the sprawling invasiveness of non-native Phragmites. And so I forgot to pop up the map earlier. So you're going to see that, notice that it is kind of clustered within the Twin Cities area. And so, in these last 4 years, ongoing efforts have continued to raise awareness. They've also been working on identifying new populations. With that, all the populations that they've been treating, they've been fortunate in that they've been able to visit and assess the patches to determine if they've been eliminated or if they're still present. And it's really positive news because a substantial number of these that were previously treated are no longer detectable. And so all in all, there's just a few hundred acres of invasive Phragmites statewide. Many of the populations are very close together, kind of thinking back to that map that really quickly blipped up about the Twin Cities, which really makes management easier. Most encouragingly, they're seeing around a quarter of the populations that they've treated, they're no longer present. So it's really suggesting that the treatments are working. And it's important to kind of note that the number of populations that have just been treated once they're seeing a reduction already. So it's expected that in a few years, an effectively timed treatment, they're going to eliminate these patches, especially the larger one. And so one of our researchers, I'm just going to quote her to say, the vision for the future is one of persistence. As a statewide, we need to continue our diligence, put in the work, and see the fruits of our labors, as we know that this invasive Phragmites is now diminishing. So moving to a little bit dicier of an area, control and management after a species has become established. So we're getting into this red area, kind of that top of the graph, and a lot of this is going to be, how do we learn from the past? We're going to be failing up, right? I think that's how you phrase it. We know sometime after the 1990s to today, hundreds of lakes have been infested with zebra mussels. Several management plans have been deployed, many of which, when you look at the plan, if you were to just look at the plan and it was completed, it was successful because the plan was successful. And so that's where, when we talk about measuring our goals, this is important to have conversations with your lake association, with the DNR when it comes to these. You don't want to fall into this orange box where it's eradication or bust, but you need to parse out where your values are. And so I have just two control and management stories just to kind of talk about, because it is a large undertaking. Think about your lawn or a prairie getting restored. Like, it's a lot of small work, small manageable things, but you have to understand that they may never completely go away. For lakes where there are multiple adults found, villagers collected throughout the year, it really poses this interesting question, right? Like, if you set your management parameters to kill a zebra mussels in a confined treatment area, and you do that, is that a success to you? So the two specific examples that I have here are Bone Lake and Independence. Bone Lake, small lake, central Minnesota. 2019, they found a small handful of zebra mussels near a public water access. They surveyed the area, created a management plan, and treated for 10 days, right? With Earth Tech ZQ. The treatment killed any juveniles and adults within that treatment zones, but you're going to notice down here that we still have villagers detected outside of the treatment area. And that was 3 days before treatment. Villager tows were completed, and unfortunately, they confirmed the presence of villagers outside of the treatment area after they had already started or completed the treatment. So in 2020, though, they did additional tows throughout the lake, and even though they came back positive in 2021, they have not seen juveniles or adult zebra mussels from wading or settlement plates. They're just kind of assuming maybe reproduction still because of the presence of villagers. The second example here is Lake Independence. East central Minnesota, zebra mussels were first found in 2014 during a visual inspection. Again, public water access. Local groups ended up completing an entire statewide, lake-wide survey in which they really determined that it was kind of just at the public water access. They actually estimated that there was over 5,000 adults present surrounding that dock. They completed a treatment for 7 days. At the end of the treatment, there was no villagers, there was no adult live mussels within that zone. Unfortunately, then the following spring, when they were doing a scuba and snorkeling survey, getting out there a little bit deeper, they found an additional spot of zebra mussels past that original point of treatment. And so that prompted them to expand and do another treatment. And then later that summer, zebra mussels were kind of farmed very far outside of that area and then have since remained in the lake. So the QR code that is linked here is linking to these zebra mussel control projects that can be found. It's a really nice webpage by StoryMap. Because all of these control events are opportunities to learn and to gather information. Again, it's that point of failing up. And as you look through that page, you might come across some research examples where managers and researchers are looking into treatments to scale up treatments to reduce the number of villagers that maybe then can reduce the recruitment class for that year, which could be important just to limit the populations. Which then kind of like cues me up to talk a little bit about MAISRC, in particular MAISRC in the framework of success, because our responsibility is for research to redefine success. We were formed in 2012, to strengthen Minnesota's capacity for solving AIS. Doing this in a collaborative, coordinated, stable environment, kind of allowing for those long-term research needs to be addressed. Simply put, right, we are working to develop research-based solutions focused on reducing the spread of AIS. Our researchers, they don't live in the status quo. They understand today's problems for tomorrow's solutions. So what is possible today and the stories that I've talked about relating to success, that's going to be different tomorrow. And it's going to be different the year after that and the year after that. And that's the value of research. It's separate from management or taking the tools off of the shelf. It's innovating around the edges. And so I just have a few examples to round out my presentation. The first one is AIS Explorer. This is a free online dashboard that is made to help you support decision-making relating to AIS prevention and management. It's interactive. You can tailor it to your interest. It automatically updates with that DNR infested water sheet that I had earlier. If you use the intervention impact tool, end users can compare different strategies created by selecting specific lakes, watercraft inspectors, decontamination stations, education, outreach, anything. The collaboration tool, it's going to allow you to identify potential collaboration activities. So whether you're making informed decisions about preventing AIS in local lakes, you're seeking collaboration, these tools are designed to help you make decision-making to help prevent the establishment of invasive species. Then I have two really quick ones on distinct zebra mussel projects I'm going to mention. This first one is anti-fouling. Anti-fouling paint has been used since the early 1800s because they were trying to prevent barnacle attachments. And a lot of time these paints contain copper, mercury, arsenic, turpentine, tar, all of these toxic things. And today copper is still one of the main components of this anti-fouling paint. But researchers at the University of Minnesota, they have already successfully produced an anti-fouling paint that is made with a safe enzyme. So this goes beyond zebra mussel attachment. This is our researchers working to solve a global, worldwide issue of biofouling. My last example is looking into RNAi and its potential to control zebra mussel populations. And this is the real suppression, right? You have no non-target impacts, unlike so many of those chemicals, right? RNAi can target specific genes to reduce the overall fitness of zebra mussels. And our researchers have been studying this for years. Starting in 2016, they mapped the genome of the zebra mussel, and that unlocked the doors, right? Opened the doors for potential. And RNAi isn't new. Fruit flies, flatworms, therapeutic drugs on the market today, it has been used. This is just the first application in aquatic systems, and our researchers are really diving into this because, like I said earlier, they're looking to understand today's problems for tomorrow's solutions. So in closing, I just want to say that success is not singular for AIS. Success is definitely a result of everyone pulling together to meet a common goal, to meet that shared value. So thank you guys so much. I will open the door for questions.
Wow. Thank you so much, Maddie. That was great and full of interesting information. You, of course, offered us some hope, but a lot of caution too. Thank you for that. And I know that pulling that together was something new, and we particularly appreciate it. It'll get, I'm sure, hundreds of views on online. Maddie sent us the links also for the QR codes for the sources she cited in her talk, and we will list those near the video of her presentation on itascawaters.org. Now it's time for the Q&A portion of today's program. It will be hosted by Bill Granches, the director of the Itasca County AIS program and a longtime member of the Itasca Waters Board of Directors. Over to you, Bill.
Thank you, John. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the question and answer section of today's program. Now, you'll recall, please use the Q&A icon for submitting questions. We're not using the chat function. I will read the questions out loud that we receive when we receive them. We're probably going to combine like questions together, and we typically get a lot of questions. If we can't get to your question, please feel free to email us at itascawaters.org, and we'll be sure to get back to you. All right, so let's begin the Q&A. Our first question for Maddie is, how much time usually passes before an aquatic invasive species is identified after it infests a lake? How does this time frame differ among various aquatic invaders? And what measures can be taken to shorten this identification period?
Yeah, ooh, that's a long question.
Yeah.
When you think about this, that's equating to that invasion curve, and so it is going to vary. Best case scenario, you prevent it from entering, whether it be a watercraft inspector, whether it be diligence from citizens. But then when you think about monitoring, a really good thing for anyone interested in preventing AIS in their lakes, or just learning more about what is in a particular lake that they're passionate about, I would lead them to the AIS Detectors Core course that will teach them about how to identify species so that they can build the confidence to say, I know what that is. Join Starry Trek, learn how to throw rakes, and do self-monitoring, learn what's there, because if you're creeping up that invasion timeline and no one has gone through to just curiosity, let's do some rake throws. Wow, I'm hungry, or post-lunch coma. Doing those rake throws to just figure out what's there out of curiosity, you're going to creep up that timeline, and it's going to vary. If you have a group of zebra mussels come in, what's the timing of their entry point? Were they successfully reproducing? What if it's a clump of starry stone? Or it's going to vary for every species. But the best form of prevention is early detection, education, and just curiosity. I think if you are passionate about a particular lake, that's where you love to go, whether it's paddleboarding or fishing, kayaking, boating, recreating. Find out what's in there and enjoy it and keep it safe. Oops, you're muted.
Wow, it's contagious. I'm saying this is unusual for me. I'm usually the one that's answering the questions for these AIS, but not asking them. You're doing a fantastic job. Okay, next question. Are there any aquatic plant restoration efforts aimed at establishing a resilient ecosystem after eradicating invasive plants using methods like weighted down burlap to kill off all vegetation?
Yeah, so I wish I knew more. I'm not exactly sure about the burlap and what Minnesota is doing there, but we have, there's a few things that I know about. The Capital Region Watershed District has been doing a lot of native plantings, as well as the Minnesota DNR. And right now, one of our research graduate students, she's working in Dan Larkin Labs, her name is Abba. Her project is focusing on how to create these resilient populations. It is coming, that mentality of restoration, say after you do a treatment of Eurasian milfoil, we're getting there. And so, whether it's this year, the next year, every year is going to be better and better for restoring our native ecosystems and eliminating the impacts and populations of Eurasian water milfoil, curly leaf pondweed, starry stonewort, all of those plants. So yes, and it's coming. It's just going to get better.
Very good. Thank you. All right, back up to the top of the list. Next question from Christina. Once an invasive species is identified in a body of water, how quickly do remediation efforts need to take place for containment?
Yes, that's an awesome question. And it's like so many things, like it varies, right? I mean, depends on the species. It depends on the size. The response time to finding one individual adult zebra mussel compared to like a clump of starry stonewort, a massive clump, they might be completely different. And this is where, as soon as you find AIS, to report it to the DNR, get on EdMaps, and be that proactive citizen. It's, I try to, my personal life, I try to always be proactive, right? And I hope a lot of us are following that mentality where being proactive is going to push you further than being reactive. And so as soon as you find it, report it, start the management plan, and work with your local professionals.
Thank you for that. Carrie asks, what advice would you give lakeshore owners and lake association members on newly infested lakes?
It's to continue hope, right? Once you have this newly infested, you're going to start outlining that management plan, and you can really lean into that, lean into your professionals, take the guidance, and then to continue to be resilient, because it's not like eradication or bust. It's not, we have one species, we're going to open up the door, floodgates to allow all of them in. No, that's a compounding effect. If you have one invasive species and then all of a sudden you have a second and a third and a fourth, it's creating this environment that you're going to lose what you value most about the lake. And so remain resilient, continue your prevention efforts, and lean into your professionals, your guidance, your management plan to help reduce those impacts of AIS.
Very, very, very good. Thank you. Jan, hi Jan. Jan asks, which AIS is likely to be the next success?
I feel like it's going to be, I've listened to Nick give several presentations, and the two that are really knocking at your door are starry stonewort and spiny water fleas. Starry stonewort is particularly interesting right now. It's a macro algae, so it's a little bit different when it's treating. That's why, we have success finding it early and with hand pulls. But starry stonewort, it's spreading, and we have to kind of be aware. And one of the things that I was listening to Dan Larkin talk about is that, we did these desiccation studies, and we know, okay, clumps are 72 hours, and most people don't bring in clumps, but starry stonewort, those little bulbils, I never say it right, you guys. If you think about a lake, a boat pulling out, they have the carpet pads, and then you have the boat go on top of it. You have a wet environment that this can survive, and then you can move to another lake. And so it's the diligence, the opportunities could be there. And, I don't want to scare you. Like, that's where we can have these early detection efforts. But it's one of those, we have to do our diligence. So starry stonewort, and then spiny water flea, it's one of those smaller creatures, organisms, that has a higher potential for spread, sticking to all types of equipment that you may not typically look at, whether you're pulling up an anchor line, it could have been left on that. So it kind of creates a little bit more work for the motorist, but it's being aware of your lakes that are infested, it's doing diligence, all those things. That was a long answer, I apologize.
Well, no, that's good. There's actually, I took a different take on that. I was thinking, well, what's the next success at either removing an AIS or keeping one out? Now, I don't know how you're going to measure keeping one out, but in your opinion, what do you think is on the, you just said about RNA, for zebra
Yeah,
mussels. But
the
what do you
next
see as
success.
next possible success at remediation?
My brain went to like
Yeah.
what I've heard Nick talk about. Yeah, the next success when it comes to kind of invasive species management, I do see success in, and I'm not sure how many people in this group follow common carp or
Mm-hmm.
invasive carp. I think there's a lot of research going on the horizon for those two species, not just about, prevention measures, whether it be setting up something at lock and dams, but understanding their biology and trying to limit them. Those are two things that are really going well on the horizon, that I think we're going to start seeing some promising management work
Sure.
either come out of the university or from our partners. And then I really, RNAi is, it's a ways down the pipeline. There's a lot of permitting, issuing, compliance that has to fall into place. But since RNAi has been used to treat other, terrestrial pests, I think
Mm-hmm.
it kind of is already laying the groundwork for this aquatics. And, whether it's 1 year or 20 years, we don't know with research. We're
Sure.
getting the pave work, or the pavement is laid. We're working on it. We're figuring out, we're answering those questions. And RNAi, like that is like that's the real target. That's the real success, because it doesn't have any non-target impacts, which is really exciting.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for that. Next question. How much money does AIS cost Minnesotans each year, and how much has prevention saved?
Well, how much does it cost? I'm not sure. Maybe Bill, you can answer how much the state is able to fund. But I think I covered this in that first part with we don't know the true impact of our watercraft inspectors because we don't have that alternate reality. Nobody knows if they weren't there, would this lake have already been invaded? But based off of 225 zebra mussels not moving into new, like unknown, not previously infested lake waters, that's a pretty good indicator that you just saved that area thousands of dollars to create management plans. And same goes with other invasive species, the starry stonewort, all of these examples, they may seem annoying. I mean, but they are the first line of defense. Watercraft inspectors, I think, are so underrated because they provide so much value to preventing. So prevention measures relating to the watercraft inspectors and education is the least expensive, but the more lakes that get invaded, the more money, lake associations, public members, the state is going to be providing to help mediate those management plans.
I'm reading it. I'm just so tempted to answer
No,
these
you
questions
can.
myself, but no. Okay.
If you want to answer one, go ahead.
No. Next question. This is a really good one. Is there evidence that strategic public outreach has been successful in preventing new AIS and slowing spread of existing AIS in Minnesota?
There has. And I wish I knew this exact numbers. Megan Weber with the AIS detectors would have this probably answer queued up because education and informing and educating the public about AIS is that is like the cheapest thing. It is the bread and butter. It is what makes Minnesota successful. There's a lot of other states. You can go to the East Coast and you have a lot bigger issues when it comes to AIS. I think Minnesotans value their lakes and want to do better. And so it all starts with just informing. And this is going to be a personal story from me. I born and raised in Minnesota, and I left for a number of years. And I did native freshwater restoration kind of throughout the US. And when I moved back to Minnesota, I was talking to somebody and they're like, oh, you work with a native mussel. What is that? Well, it's not a zebra mussel. My husband, every time he would say, I work with mussels, they're like, zebra mussels? Your wife works with zebra mussels? And, we're crushing it. Knowing that, it infuriated me for a few years because I'm a native mussel biologist still at heart.
Sure,
but,
sure.
you have this Minnesota has the integrity and has this ability to reach its citizens because they care. And the fact that people know about AIS is incredible.
Yes.
Such a long-winded answer, but also Megan Weber
Oh,
is awesome. And AIS detectors, if you haven't taken the course, I would fully recommend doing it.
I couldn't agree more. That's why we offer free scholarships for people that want to become AIS detectors. Anecdotally, back in 2014, when most aquatic invasive species programs started, when the state aid came in, and including ours was formed, it was not uncommon that about a third of the people that were inspected at water access sites failed inspection. Now the numbers are much greater. Many more people are doing it. We're doing 27 to 30,000 inspections a year, and typically in the state, the only 2 to 4% fail inspection. Education does work, so that's my 2 cents on that one.
No, I love that.
I love that one too. It is great. Okay, next question. Since we have let me start over. I'm too excited. Since we have sort of controlled ballast water introduction, what's the most dangerous source of likely introduction of new invasive species?
Kind of the horizon things. I mean, we know the normal modes, right? Transportation from boat or movement, and that's still
Sure.
probably number one. But there's two other aspects that sometimes people don't think about so much, and that's bait releasing.
Yeah,
So what's in your bait bucket? You buy it from the local bait dealer. They probably got it from purchase it from someone else, and you can't always identify those juvenile fish. So all your bait, any live bait that you purchase, should be discarded on shore and not dumped into the lake. And then the second thing is also like aquarium trade and aquarium releases. I'm sorry. I know I loved my goldfish too, but he probably shouldn't go in a lake. Same with that crayfish, or if I have a crayfish boil, which is growing in popularity, the larger species of crayfish are not native to Minnesota. And so being aware that live animals that are not native to this area should go in the trash and
yeah,
not be released. So, boater movement, obviously, but then, yeah, bait buckets and aquarium trade.
absolutely. Well, the key is it's us that are spreading it. And interestingly, Eurasian water milfoil, hydrilla, two of the worst, they were aquarium plants. That's all. Anyway, okay.
Thankfully,
Next
we don't have
question.
hydrilla yet.
Yet, I know it's in Michigan, so be afraid, people. We really need to be vigilant on that one. Okay. Um, Next question. You mentioned that being proactive is important. Can you provide some examples of how Minnesota has been proactive in addressing AIS management?
I think Minnesota has done a bang up job. Just the history of AIS in Minnesota from, creating the AIS invasive species unit to creating education to, the funds. So, Minnesota as a whole has this central focus on preserving our ecosystems. And I think through counties, local lake associations, schools, educators, we've done the work. We have invasive species in education curriculums. And so a lot of this groundwork has happened, and it's a result of
Sure.
just people that care and really starting to push things forward. So
It's interesting. I didn't see this, but there's a note by the way, there's a crew behind me. I don't do this by myself. There's a crew behind me doing an outstanding job of taking these questions and getting them to me. And they actually just asked that I make sure that I mention that our county watercraft inspection programs are recording 99% compliance, and statewide has been over 95% since 2015. So that's yay us. Thanks, team. Okay. We are seeing more harmful algae blooms. Are there invasive toxic algae?
not that I know of. When you think about toxic algae blooms, I'm not probably educated enough. I wish I could like phone a friend right now to just ask some specific questions. But when it comes to toxic algae that is blooming, it's just important to monitor what's going into the lake, point source, think about what you're doing, whether it be to fertilizers, your septic system, cutting grass, being a good steward of the lake is going to forever be important.
Sure.
But I don't know of any invasive toxic algae. I think sometimes when species are removing algae, whether it be like a zebra mussel, and they're not selectively consuming those cyanobacteria, that cyanobacteria is opportunistic, right? And it can kind of move in and take over.
Took the words out of my mouth. This one's for you, Maddie. Since you see zebra mussels harming native mussels, how is the general health of native mussels in the state?
It depends where you are. Native mussels are more commonly found in rivers. There's about 5 species that are found in lakes, 3 that are most common to be found in lakes. Probably as a whole, if a native mussel is in a lake system that has been invaded with zebra mussels, they probably have taken a major hit. If not, they may not even be present. In a river system and in some areas, we are seeing, areas rebound, but it really varies on where you are. It's not like statewide we're positive 2 points or negative 2 points. It's very circumstantial to that area. And I had this question a lot asked when I was at the DNR, what somebody could do for native mussels in a lake with zebra mussels. And the best thing is to pick them up and pull off the zebra mussels and just put the mussel back in the lake. You just allowed it to move. It got its mobility back. It can siphon, it can feed, it can breathe, it can close. And so all of those things are important.
Excellent. There are so many, I've been scrolling ahead, so many outstanding questions here. Unfortunately, we're out of time. Maddie, thank you so much for this. John, I'm turning it back over to you.
What a pleasure, Maddie. Thanks so much for being with us and the great talk and answering all those questions. The native mussel question was from me. I gotta be honest, because I love them too. Thanks, Bill, and thank you to Maddie too of the Minnesota Aquatic Invasive Species Research Center. Make sure you register for our next Water Wisdom program coming up on September 5th to learn about changing water quality in the Itasca County region. If you would like to watch this program again or recommend it to your family, friends, or neighbors, a recording of today's talk will soon be on our website, itascawaters.org, along with all our previous programs. To give us your feedback, please click on the survey link, which will be on the screen at the end of today's program. You will also be getting an email evaluation form, so you can choose how you'd like to respond. I'm John Downing for Itasca Waters. Thanks so much for being with us today.